This is the Connections, Coffee, and Confidence podcast, and I'm your host, Janice. I'm a strategic communications consultant, a podcaster, and a content creator with a background in public relations and a passion for talking about things like messaging, content creation, and strategy. This podcast covers all of those things, plus the occasional interview with inspiring women communicators. So whether you create content for your business or as your business, I know you'll find what you need to create your success. Probably in this episode. So let's get to it. Hey, and welcome to this episode of Connections, Coffee, and Confidence with me, Janice. And apropos of really not much, this is episode 99. It's the Wayne Gretzky of episodes. This is kind of a big deal, in case you don't get the Wayne Gretzky reference. I remember sitting with the person who told me that I would run into things to say. Now, never say never, but almost 100 episodes in, and I have a list on my notes app that would knock your socks off. The hardest part is sticking with a content plan and trying not to just pick which one comes next based off of what I feel like I want to talk about. Although, let's be very honest, sometimes that's the way it happens anyway. And this week, I want to talk about audience. Like you. I love you, by the way. I'm not sure if I've told you that, but I have a serious, deep and squishy place inside of my heart for you. Thank you for listening. So, audiences. As business owners with bills to pay and lives to lead, we often forget about the subtleties or the niceties of our communications. I spend a lot of time speaking with my children, who don't go for the, "Hi, how are you? It's cold out there, eh? Gee, you look lovely today," kind of thing. So when I'm out in public talking to other people or even just chatting with the neighbors, sometimes I forget those niceties myself. I'm just a bit out of practice. And the same goes for our marketing and our public relations work, our content creation. Sometimes in creating our content, in talking about what we do or sell, we forget to pad it out with a story or something to connect our audiences with the item. Sometimes we stick up a cool picture or a video of our thing in motion, and we just invite people to sign up or buy now. And the unfortunate thing is that we can't always forget about the wee bit of banter as content creators. But the brilliant thing is that we are uniquely poised with access to a plethora of tidbits that we can use to soften our communications or to entice our audiences, to hit home with them, because as business owners, we are lucky enough to regularly speak with our people. We're regularly listening. And this is where the gold lies. I'm sure you've heard the old adage, when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one, right? And the thing is that it's true. When we look at our communication strategy, our audience features quite heavily because having a good idea of who they are shapes how we deliver our messaging, both in terms of the words that we used, as well as the media or the method that we use to get our messages to them. So let's say my audience is a business owner who also happens to be a busy mom. She has about 50,000 things to do on any given day, and she knows that she needs a bit of a push with her marketing and communication stuff, but she doesn't have time to do a course, or she isn't ready to hand it over just yet. Knowing that, I shape my content into 15 to 20 minute podcasts that can be listened to while she drives the school run, or makes the dinner, or folds the laundry, or just has a sanity-saving cup of coffee. Does that mean I'm speaking to no one else? No. Other people will be interested in the information that I deliver and appreciate the medium I use. I have listeners who are men. Some are empty nesters, some are young, and some are single with no kids. Some are just starting out in the PR or communications career, or some are starting out as content creators and social media managers. I'm talking to loads of different types of people who appreciate the information delivered quickly and without a lot of jazz. But if I don't focus myself on just one type of person, I end up going all over the place and basically missing everyone. It's the same with you. When you focus on speaking to the people you want to engage with, you don't exclude everyone else. You just have a targeted approach to your communications. Targeted approaches are applauded on this podcast. I will head into my take on the benefits of knowing your audience in just a moment, but I want to kind of do a little detour and address the idea of the ICA, the Ideal Client Avatar. I felt really icky about that term when I first started poking around this internet-based marketing learning stuff space. Yeah, I edited this podcast and still can't come up with a better descriptor, so that's what we're rolling with here. The prevailing advice has been to pick one person. Sometimes, describe them down to their eye color and what area of town they live in, and you speak to that person. Fortunately, the Black Lives Matter and Every Child Matters movements have worked to really call that approach into question. Many big-name marketing gurus are changing how they approach audience targeting, but I still hear it said without any clarification, so I feel the need to do my bit. And I'm not the best person to speak up about representation and inclusion, but I certainly have my radar up, and when you define your audience that narrowly, it's just that. It's narrow. There isn't a lot of room in there for the other people who fit your audience. In fact, you may be alienating many who are your ideal customer. They just get turned off your messaging. Now, good messaging will turn away the right or the wrong, depending on how you want to phrase it, people. But I mean people who aren't ready for your product, people who aren't in a space to use your service. Not people who are excluded based on ethnicity, ability, identity, or any other ways we can exclude people. So to recap, what I'm telling you is to be specific, but broad. Okay? I like to think of people as a group. Busy female business owners. And then I think about what this group has in common in a general sense. And we take some of those commonalities and the people that they belong to, and we group them together to create a more specific group. And we speak to that group. So female business owners who are also parents, who don't have time to do a course and either can't afford to or aren't comfortable handing over their communications work, but who also want to learn more. And that does narrow it down. My audience probably could include all busy female business owners, but my messaging is going to speak to this group. Is it narrow enough? Time will tell. This is enough to inform the references that I use. Listen while you fold the laundry or make the dinner or do the school run. Not all moms are going to do all of these things, but you probably do one of them. And it informs how I deliver the content. Less than 20 minutes because that's probably the extent of your attention span or your quiet time. It is helpful to have a person that you're comfortable with in mind when you actually have to write or speak. I feel very uncomfortable putting out blanket advice to just have one person in mind ever. Have a few ICAs if that helps you focus and actually do what you need to do. Rotate them around and speak to them all in turn. As long as they are a little bit different in their specifics, but stay within the commonalities of the group, you should be fine. So sometimes I might give an example about a product-based business. Other times I reference services. These business owners are still inside my target group. And yes, there is an argument to pick one or the other, but I firmly believe that what I talk about is equally applicable to both. So speak to both ICAs in turn, and then they aren't left out. The message remains the same, but it's the references that kind of tweak it. It's that delivery method. Okay, so that might feel like a little bit of work. It might feel like a hassle. But honestly, it's necessary work. And here are 3 reasons why you want to know who you're talking to and the benefits of knowing your audience. The first being that you speak to them to make connections. So you're not the only person doing what you're doing, but you're the only you doing what you're doing. You're the only one doing it your way. So infuse yourself into your communications and make the connection. Make the relationship and feel good about the interaction. Get out there and say what you need to say to the ears that need to hear it. And this is much easier to do when you know who you're talking to, when you can use references that mean something to them. So think about it, like when you meet someone in real life for the first time, how comfortable are you? You might be full of the gab, but odds are the conversation might be a bit tough at times. But the second time you meet, you have a better idea of how to approach them. You know not to discuss the rugby match in the weekend because you know they don't watch sports. Same with your audience of potential clients. It can be hard being in business, especially when it comes to talking about yourself and what you do. But when you like what you do, when you enjoy who you do it with or you do it for, and that's the connection piece, the work becomes easier to tolerate. So there's that delightfully selfish motivation. But there's also reason number 2, which is to hear and understand. Yes, effective communication is a two-way street, with information going both ways. So as soon as you have that connection established, the listening back is the key to all things amazing. So remember a few minutes ago when I had said how lucky we are? Because we have access to the tidbits that soften our communications, our sales pitches, and our other content. This is where you get those tidbits. I have a side hustle. I sell Epicure. It's a Canadian women-led business that focuses on uniting time-starved families who want to reconnect around the table and share good food, eat healthier, and live better. In the old days, I used to go to people's houses and they'd have some friends around. We'd have a cooking class. We'd cook the food. We'd eat the food. Lots of people feel like they can't cook. And I love standing next to them as they tried cooking new things, tried eating them, and realized that yes, they can cook, and they can fit that meal into the time between work and hockey practice. But what I really did was listen. I listened to the questions asked. I listened to the comments made. I listened to other people who had already used whatever product in the past and what they thought. And then I used those insights to shape my next cooking class, to frame my next video, to pad out and add those niceties to my next Facebook post. They connected better with my audience because it was their own words being reflected back. And nothing sounds as good as your own words, right? Says the podcaster. But also because it showed that I listened, that I was a person interested in making that connection with the people I was working with. And if you demonstrate that effort, it'll return to you. When you listen to your audience, you can not only get access to those stories that help anchor your marketing, but it can also help you understand the purpose of your product. We create something, be it a physical thing or a service or an electronic whatever, we have in our mind what it is and what it's for. But sometimes we miss what it actually does for the person for whom it's intended. We miss the essence, the sizzle. And that's unfortunate because, as they say, it's the sizzle that sells, not the sausage. Or sometimes we sell the sizzle, but unbeknownst to us, there's another use or a benefit that we haven't thought of. You might sell an aromatherapy bath bomb that has been specially formulated for soothing headaches. And that's what your marketing speaks about. You might be selling it based on the headache reducing qualities and, you know what, doing really well with it. And then in the chatting with the customer or reading a review or a comment on Instagram, they might mention that they always buy your bath bombs because they clean up so easily. They don't make a mess in the tub and they don't make it slippery. So they confidently give them to their mother and let their kids use them as well. Wow, that is fantastic information that never crossed your mind. Or they might say how they use your bath bombs for their headaches because they can't use prescription headache medication while they're pregnant, but your essential oils are safe for pregnancy. That is also a fantastic selling point. These are selling features you might have missed and language you probably didn't think to use, but you can now because you showed that you're interested in making a connection and you listened. Listening to understand might even lead you to create a new product or a new line. When you engage and listen, when you read between the lines sometimes, or flat out ask a clarifying question, sometimes you get a glimpse of how to do things differently, and that can work to everyone's benefit. We get blinkered, like we're human, but when we listen and understand our audience, we can see a bigger picture more clearly. Which leads us beautifully on to reason number 3 of why we want to know our audience, which is the bottom line. It's sales. I've been listening to some other communications podcasts, and I've noticed that they don't often mention money. Not in terms of budget, nor in terms of making sales. But if we're in business, we need to make money. Our communications goals might be to increase visibility with our target audience by a certain factor, or to establish a know, like, and trust factor with a new demographic. But those communications goals stem from a business goal, usually to pay your bills and afford the nice cup of coffee without feeling bad, or whatever your version of that it is for you. But it's sales, right? So I talk about sales, and honestly, when you know your audience, you tell them you're interested in knowing them, and then you engage with them. When you listen to their words and their meanings, the natural progression is usually more sales. The people who engage with you, who appreciate your engagement, those people will either spend their money with you or they'll become your best ambassadors. They will tell people about you and what you do, even if there's only the remotest chance that you can actually help that third party. They will be there for you, and that is priceless. So yes, while it is kind of scary and kind of frustrating and annoying to try to figure out who your audience actually is, who they are as a group of people, and how they like to receive information, and while it takes a leap of faith to begin speaking to them in a more personal way, it is so worth it to your business to take that knowledge, that data, and use it as the tool that it's meant to be. Knowing your audience is part of your strategy, and your strategy is what you rely on to reach your goals. In an effort to get to know you better, I'm inviting you into my Facebook group for a free brainstorming session on video ideas for your social feeds. Video, be it TikTok or Reels or the OG YouTube, is the way social is going right now, and I recently sat down to make a list of 5 reel ideas. I actually ended up with 10, because once I opened my mind up to the possibilities, I was really surprised at how easy it was. I know that sometimes the idea generation stage is difficult, so I'm hosting a 1-hour session, May 2nd, 2022, to walk you through the brainstorming that I did for myself to come up with these ideas. I'm not technical, but I will point you to some resources if you need help with the actual production of the videos. This session is primarily to get an idea of how to come up with content that aligns with your messaging and your brand, and how to make a video outline for that content. The details will be inside my Facebook group, Connections, Coffee, and Confidence Community. So if you're interested in joining us, that's where we are. There is no sale at the end. There's no surprise sticker. It's free. It was helpful for me, so I thought I would extend the courtesy. I'll pop the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate your listening, and if you think that this might be helpful to someone you know, please feel free to share it. Thank you. I've realized that I had an entire point about audiences that I actually didn't make in this episode, so there might be a part 2, probably episode 101. But I'll be back again next week with episode number 100, which will be more personal, less business. Until then, my friend, have a fan-freaking-tastic rest of your day. Thanks so much for listening this week. I invite you to sign up for my email list or join me in the Connections Coffee and Confidence community on Facebook. Those are the people who get first dibs on any classes or products I create, and they benefit from the extras I can't get into in a podcast format. I also lovingly request that if you've enjoyed this podcast, you leave a review on Apple. When I see a new review, I get so excited I almost spill my cappuccino froth. Almost. And if you're a woman entrepreneur who's ready to get serious about using the power of communications to grow your business, send me an email at janice@janicefogarty.com. All my details are in the show notes. Thank you again for listening today, and I'll chat with you again next week.